people off. Okay, I guess that's the end of that conversation.
You know, that's interesting because I have been on Netflix and watching Downton Abbey, Downton Abbey, the series, and the matriarch of the family controls things big time, big time.
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. Are we talking about you controlling things again?
Yep.
No, no. Someone else he's speaking of.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
How was your trip to Chicago?
Well, I got to Atlanta airport, and when I got to the plane, I realized I was on the plane, realized that I had left my cell phone at security. So I was all weekend without any communication. I had no telephone numbers and anything, you know.
Okay.
So it was quite of an experience. And as a matter of fact, I have to leave the meeting early to go to the airport today to see if they have identified it and located it for me.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I mean, I do more on my cell phone than I do on my computer sometimes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cell phones is like, yeah, it's like you lose your life if you lose your cell phone because everything.
yeah,
Yes, right.
you got a lot of information on there.
Yeah.
A lot of information and data and stuff, you know. So that was a hard one to just to say, okay, I can't do anything about it. Let's go ahead and enjoy ourselves. And I did take that architectural tour. I took my family members on there. It was like 14 of us on the tour.
Uh-huh. Wow. Okay.
Architectural on the, yeah.
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 By the way, happy belated birthday.
Well, thank you. You know where we celebrated my birthday at? On the 95th, the Signature Restaurant on the 95th floor of the John Hancock building.
Oh, neat.
Okay.
That's great.
16 of us.
Wow. Okay.
The youngest person was 30.
Okay. All right.
I once got stuck in an elevator in the Hancock building.
Whoa.
Nope, that was not fun.
I know it wasn't. All in case, you know. Yeah. The family is aging, you know, we're all aging out, so it makes it a little challenging. Yeah. They were kind of afraid to, some of them were at the embassy suites and they were on the 17th floor. A lot of them were concerned about the 17th floor. And then they said, it's the 95th, that's the name of the restaurant.
Wow. Okay.
But,
Yeah, I hope
but they all
nobody's
adjusted.
afraid of heights. Yeah.
Oh, boy, some of them were. They turned around the other way. They wouldn't look.
Yeah.
But they got over it. I was very proud of them. They were very. Some of my friends were saying that there was like taking the nursing home people to the out for a little mini vacation. We had a lot that needed their companions and a lot of help when we got it done. So
Yeah. Wow.
very fragile.
Well, I'm glad you're back. So, and that
Thank you.
and that you went and had a good birthday. So,
Yeah.
anyhow, we got lots of stuff to cover today. Okay. First of all, good morning, everybody. How
Good
you
morning.
doing there, Alon? And Naomi, are you talking to us today?
Hey.
See if we can get Naomi to actually talk to us today.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay, I'm having trouble with my computer.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad to see you here. So, yeah,
Hi, Naomi.
you've come to the class a couple of times, and you know I've tried.
A couple of times.
Yeah, tried talking to you, and
Yeah, my computer is it's old.
yeah. Okay. They do that. They get much older faster than we do.
Yeah.
You know, it's like about every 4 or 5 years, you know, you're pretty much so looking at replacing them, you know, because they become obsolete very quickly. So it's crazy. So
Yeah, and
anyway.
they still look good. I mean, the computer looks good, but it still won't work right.
Well, yeah, the problem is that the technology changes so quickly, and that, you know, websites, things like that, you know, shift to these new technologies that
Yes,
your computer wasn't set up to operate under. And
that's
so,
right.
yeah, it begins to limit you as to, you know, what you can do. You know, I mean, there are places you can't go all of a sudden because it's like, yeah, well, no, we don't support that browser anymore or something, you know. Anyway, we're not going to complain about computers too much, because they are part of our life and they're here to stay. But I've got a bunch of stuff to share with you today. And one of the things that I wanted to share was kind of a thought about doing artwork, you know, which is what we're all about here, you know, and creating a piece of art, and the steps that you might want to go through, or at least consider, you know, before you launch in to grabbing a brush, putting paint out on a palette, and start throwing paint up there. So, has everybody got something to write with?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. You know, take some notes with, because you might actually want to think about this. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to break this down into 3 components, okay? And the first thing is concept. So, you know, before you do anything, for the most part, you need to have an idea. You know, it's like, and that could be very simple. It could, you know, or it could be very complex. You could try to actually tell a story, you know, visually. You know, historical painters, you know, folks like that did that all the time. But it could also be as simple as, you know, you just want to paint that object because of the light or the atmosphere or the feeling that it gives you, right? So concept can be a very broad thing. But most people, I would say, most artists who haven't been doing this for a long time, they tend to skip that part, you know, and go right to, well, I just want to paint a really pretty landscape, or I want to paint a portrait or something like that. But spending a little more time on the front end, the concept part, is actually really beneficial to the development of your own personal art and making your art your own. Because I think one of the big drives in creating images for, you know, visual artists are the fact that we have a particular view of life. You know, there's something that we want to say through our paintings with people who view them. And so being sort of selective and taking a little bit of time on the front end to really think through what it is that you're trying to express is a very good approach, right? Now, to do this, you can do several things. You know, you can do research and gather information on a subject. You can do preliminary thumbnails, you know, little sketches, things like that. Preliminary color studies, you know, are always helpful. You know, particularly if you're going to deal with color. And so doing just basic preparatory work is really, really important. And out of the 3 steps in really kind of creating a piece of art, I would say that this is actually the most important, all right? Really is. So once you get the concept down, then you have to get into the mode of, okay, I'm going to begin to make this thing actually happen. All right. And so the next step is, where do you get your resources? You know, what can you, you know, what do you get as a visual reference. You know, are you working from life? You know, are you out on location? Are you in your studio, you know, and maybe setting up a still life or something like that? Or, you know, if it's, depending on the concept, if it's something that's not readily available to you, you know, where do you go to gather resources? You know, do you go on the internet, download images and photos, or do you create your own? You know, part of that process, and this gets into doing thumbnails and things, is a lot of artists, because their idea is something that doesn't exist, you know, you can't get reference on it, they rely on drawing and drawing, you know, from their own mind, you know, from their own head, I guess you would say, and they develop a series of drawings, you know, until they can begin to visualize this scene or, you know, whatever they're doing, you know, in their own minds, clear enough to where they can begin to actually execute it, right? So, you know, after the concept, you go through a preparation stage, and then you go into execution. And execution is actually, by the time that you get there, there really shouldn't be a lot of mystery or questions about what you're going to do. You know, you should have a fairly clear path at that point on how to go about, you know, creating this piece of art. You know, are you going to paint it in oil, watercolor? You know, what kind of surface are you going to work on? You know, and what kind of techniques, you know, are you going to be using? At this point, you know, you should have this, you know, fairly visualized, you know, in your own head as to how you're going to approach this. Right? So that being said, okay, I want to share with you something that I'm beginning to work on, okay? And I'm just really beginning at the conceptual stage, okay? And so we're gonna skip that one, okay? And we're gonna go to, let's see, let me find the right photo. Yes, this one. Okay, I've been wanting to do a still life for a while. And the problem with still lifes are really controlling the light. And how do you get this sort of old masters Flemish sort of lighting, you know, on a subject? And how do you control the light in an environment, you know, like your studio, things like that? And so basically what I did is I took a very large box, compliments of Amazon.com, you know, who shipped some things to me. And I decided that, okay, I wanted to set up what we call a light box, right? Now, the idea with a light box is that it's not that you're adding light, it's that you're actually controlling it. You're taking it down to a single directional light source. Can everybody see the flowers?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Now, if you'll notice that they're sitting inside that box, okay? Now,
It's
what I've
beautiful.
done, yeah, I've taken some just, you know, black foam core, and I've, you know, cut a sheet and put in the bottom, cut a sheet and put in the back, so that I was working against a dark background. And you'll notice up here in the upper left-hand corner that I've cut 2 windows, you know, in this box. And then I've taken a like a studio lamp, and I've set it up outside the box so that it's, you know, basically coming in at about a 45-degree angle, or, you know, whatever appropriate angle. And I can adjust it up or down, shift it. And so I can control my lighting and my shadows And I can light certain parts of this, and then leave other parts, more or less in halftone or shadow. And so, the effect of this is that with the controlled lighting, I don't have to worry about multiple light sources. I basically got light coming from one direction, which is what the old masters and the Flemish painters basically worked with. If you look at paintings by Vermeer, for example, he's fairly well known to all of you. One of the things that made Vermeer's paintings so special was the fact that the studio that he had was a Northlight studio, and it was a single bank of windows. And all of his paintings were painted in that studio, all of his subjects. And all of them, had this light flooding in, through that window, illuminating that space. And his paintings are really, yes, they're about the subjects, but they're really more about the light within that space and how he captures that light. If you look at other Dutch painters, and particularly still life painters, they have these beautiful renderings, of, flowers, fruit, you name it, metalware, fabrics, things like that. And they're all really, really rich, because they controlled the light so carefully that, they had this really nice illumination of things, and very, very clear, distinct shadows and lights, in all of their compositions. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. And so this is the setup. And so I photographed this. And the thing, now these particular flowers are called peonies. Everybody familiar with peonies?
My mother's favorite, yes.
Yeah. Well, it's, one of my favorite flowers too. You can't get them most of the year because they're very seasonal and they don't last long. Okay.
That's true.
Yeah. So basically, they have a very short time in which they bloom, really right about now. And when you buy them, they'll last about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at the most, if you're lucky, and you change the water in them, stuff like that. But when you buy them, they're these tight little balls. Let me blow these up. And then you get to kind of, your house smells great for a couple of days. Because they're very fragrant flowers. But the other thing is they come in these very tight balls when you first buy them. And eventually they just slowly kind of open up. And so when I bought these, just about all of them were closed. And so it took about 3 days to get to this stage. And then I did some another day or two later that I'll show you. But just trying to capture the lighting and trying to get, the light and shadow, on the texture of these flowers and on the forms of these, spherical, buds is kind of what I'm after. And so there's one with the black background. This is a couple of days later, I think, this one. And I changed the background to a piece of, art, it's a piece of art paper. And what do they call that? Where it's not tie-dyed, it's, anyway. Yeah, they take it and they basically, put the color, they float it in water and then, you transfer it off onto the paper. And again, it just adds a different element. Also notice that the flowers are more open, pretty much so. It's like I said, it's another day or so later. So, and here's another possible situation where it's a larger still life and it includes other objects in it, slightly different lighting. Now this is one of the problems with painting this is that you would have, a multiple, multiple light sources. You have your main light source, being the lamp, but then beyond that, you've got these windows in the background that are adding a second light source in here. So, that would be something that you would have to kind of grapple with, in trying to paint this is, the shift in these multiple light sources. Let's see.
Did you leave some of the objects out?
Pardon?
Did you leave some of the objects out? Just focus in on the center part of
Well,
it?
you could. I think everything on the table is things that I would want there. I would probably eliminate the background.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Basically just darken out the background, totally eliminate, the windows and, all this stuff back here in the back. And just keep, sort of the table, maybe the corner of the chairs, and then the elements actually on the table itself.
Did you make that little statue? Is that one of yours?
Yeah, that's a sculpture I did.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I wanted it there,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Because, and it shows, yes. It looks nice there.
okay. Anyway, so here's another possible scenario where we eliminate everything except for, a couple of the flowers themselves. And again, that would make a pretty nice painting, just all on its own.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm at with this, is just kind of thinking through the process, trying to come up with different ideas for the composition. And I haven't really gotten to the thumbnail stage or anything at this point. I'm just gathering reference and information and trying to figure it out.
So do you have to decide at what stage are you going to have photo references that you're going to start, you're going to paint it? Because you said that the new bulbs are opening up every day. So,
Yeah.
And so you can't just keep changing.
No. And the thing is, with something as ephemeral as flowers, that don't really last very long. Same thing would happen with a lot of like food, right? It's you either do it immediately, while it's sitting there right in front of you, and or you're going to have to, get some good photographic reference that you can rely on to work on it over time. And knowing a little bit about these flowers and how fast they fade and change, I'm pretty much going to be doing this from photography, right? Now, one thing that I am going to do before I let the flowers go totally, and I've already actually started doing this, is I've done a couple of color boards where I've started mixing some of the different colors and things within the flower and the gradation, so that I can get a more accurate paint mixture of what the actual color is on the flower, rather than just relying on the photograph. Because when I look at the flower and I look at the photograph isn't bad. I mean, it's relatively close, but it's missing. It's missing some of the cooler reds, in the color mixtures, and the photograph doesn't quite capture that. And so by doing some color boards, and trying to mix those ranges of color, you begin to get a better understanding of the possible color ranges and things you can use in the painting to make it really more accurate. A lot of this, because of the photography and the fact that the actual light source is an incandescent bulb, rather than a daylight color balance bulb, it makes things look warmer. And so, like a lot of these lights and things in here, you're getting a lot of yellows and oranges and things in these lit areas that don't really exist on those flowers. And that's all from the lighting. And so, you know, wanting to be more accurate and stay true to the actual color of the flower, it's good to make observations about that and do a few little studies on color mixtures. And that way you've got something to go back to and refer to, you know, once the flower is gone.
Do you use your phone camera?
Yeah, that's what these were shot on. Okay, I've got an iPhone 8 Plus, so it's the big iPhone. And one little trick that I might suggest, I take a lot of landscape photos and like figure photos and things with my phone, and generally I do that handheld. You know, and you know, you just kind of point it and, you know, focus it, and take a picture, right? This is a little more involved. And so one of the things that I did is, in this case, I found a chair, kind of a bar stool, and I used the back of the bar stool to rest my phone on. And that way my hand didn't move, and I was able to get a sharper, clearer photograph, you know, of the flowers, because I didn't, you know, it's not moving in and out all the time. So, you know, keeping your phone stable or your camera, whatever you use, you know, having something to rest it on, and particularly, you know, shooting still lives, things like that will be really helpful in getting a good, clear picture. The other thing is, you're just seeing a few photos here, probably shot close to 30 or 40 photos of this still life. And the reason I did that, and I don't know how many of you are really familiar with taking photographs with your iPhone and or your Android, but I know in iPhone, if you want to bracket your photographs, let's say you want to take the same picture like 4 times, but you want to take something to sort of capture the areas of highlight, what you would do is you would focus your camera by taking your finger and just touching that particular element on the screen, and a little box will come up. And so what happens is the phone automatically adjusts for the lighting in that particular area of the photo. And that way you can get a little bit clearer detail. If you don't do that, you know, elements like this flower or the edge of this are basically just big white blobs because of the intensity of the light. It just kind of burns them out. In fact, you can kind of see it here and you can kind of see it here. So, you know, bracketing, and, you know, usually when I bracket a series of photos, I'll take like 4 photos and I'll touch really the lightest light in the composition. I'll do a mid-tone area. So, I'll, you know, the next shot, you know, I'll touch in here. And then I'll do a shadow side of it. So, you know, I'll touch in this area. And then I'll do my darkest darks, you know, so I'll come down here in the leaves, things like that. And again, let it bracket and adjust for this. And that way I'm working from these 4 photos, and I've got a pretty good representation of all the details that are there. Unfortunately, you can't get that all in just one photo. So bracketing your photos is kind of important. And the same is true, you know, whether or not you're doing a still life or whether you're doing a, let's say you're outdoors and you're doing a landscape. Well, have you ever kind of noticed in your photos that maybe you get the details in like the land mass and the trees, but your sky is just totally blown out and it doesn't look anything like the sky? that you were kind of experiencing there? Well, again, bracketing your photo would be helpful. So you take one photo to adjust for the sky, and you take another photo to adjust for the overall landmass, and then take a photo of just the area that you're focused on. You're not changing the frame. You're just touching on these different elements and then taking 3 different pictures, and that way you've got a good range of, basically the camera adjusting for those 3 different areas. And then you've got a pretty good complete set of reference at that point that you can work with if you need to. Was that confusing or?
Got a question, if you don't mind.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I noticed that you on that original, the first photo that you showed us, you left the background, the opposite side from the light source, as brown. So didn't that warm up? Just did you try any other colors of the opposite side from the light
For the
in
reflective
order
light?
to change reflective light?
Yeah, I haven't so far. No, I use that one sheet of paper, and I use black, and I may go back to
Well,
it. Yeah,
No, the opposite side from the light, so that you're not
Right.
reflecting brown, you're reflecting, something other.
right. Yeah, you're talking about this side wall right here.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
like you had a blue background there, that might cool it down some,
Right.
and in reflecting light. So I was curious if you thought
Right.
about that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to go get some more black mat board, so that I can put some black on this side, so that
Uh-huh.
it's kind of reflecting the same temperature. Yeah, that's just a matter of did I have enough black background to do that with? No. So that would require a trip to the art store, and this is something that I'm going to use again. The nice thing about setting something up like this is you could take an old cardboard box and you could set this up and then line it with whatever, if you wanted a warmer color, you could put warmer colors in there, cooler colors, anything else, and really kind of control the light and the reflected light and the temperatures in there. And this is something that you can use over and over and over again, right? It's not a one-time thing. And so if you are doing these kind of small to medium-sized still lives, and I would say this box is probably about a good 30 inches wide and probably a good 36 to 40 inches tall. So it's a good sized box, and this is something that I can keep down in my garage or whatever, and then whenever I want to set up a still life and control the lighting, I can do that.
Is that
Yeah.
daylight or is that a lamp coming, the light?
No,
The light
no.
source. What is the light source?
It's a studio lamp.
Studio lamp, okay.
Yeah, that I'm using. It's actually like one of those. It's got like a folding arm, like an architect's lamp, that you put on a drawing table. That's basically what it is. And that's why I was saying I wasn't really happy with the fact that because of the lamp that I used, I had to use an incandescent bulb. And incandescent bulbs basically they're kind of an orange basic color to the light itself. And so, I'm looking for a long-term, I'm looking for a different lighting solution. And I'll probably try to get something that is using these balanced daylight bulbs so that, as I, photograph things, I'm not shifting it, to a warmer, range of color. So anyway. Any other questions?
I saw a lamp today that some guy who's an airbrush person, it's called a Ben Q, B-E-N, and the letter Q.
Uh-huh.
And it's very interesting. You might want to check it out, just look at, because the actual surface of the light is a parabola. I mean, it's rounded, so the light is coming kind of from all different directions. They call it a reading lamp, but you can change the values from a cool to a warmer intensity on it. It's real cool. I was looking it up today. It's a little expensive.
Okay.
It's about $280 for this lamp, but
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, but if you're going to use it, you know, in the studio, I guess they're mainly working with it to sort of adjust the light on the surface so that they can adjust the temperature and see the color. Is that correct?
more so use it when they're actually doing painting to get a really a good broad light on the objects. Of this guy was painting models and things, you know, not what do you call it, paintings on a canvas or something like that. He was doing model painting and was
Being three-dimensional like model.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up airbrush because we're going to actually look at an artist who does airbrush today. So, at any rate, any other questions about this? You know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, or other than I'm crazy. So, all right.
Oh, that's good. Well, when you had all those different, let us know what you decide to paint.
I'm sorry. What?
Let us know what you decide to paint, all the objects or just the flowers.
Oh, okay. Well, you'll probably end up seeing a whole series of thumbnails and color studies before I get, you know, too committed to doing anything. So.
Weren't you doing a series of flowers though before?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. And this is kind of
Will this fit in with that?
Yeah.
This is okay.
Yeah. This is all. Yeah, I've got about 4 different series. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Charles, you mentioned that there are stories behind paintings. What's your story behind that one?
Well, I said you could have a story behind a painting. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's
okay.
Yeah, the concept part. You know, the story for me would be really the light. You know, it's really more about the light than it is about the, you know, the subject in this case. And just having that kind of old world, you know, one directional light source, which most of us don't live with today, and we don't experience it quite the same way. You know, because we, you know, modern house, we have lighting everywhere, you know. That didn't exist really until really around about the 1800s, you know. And so we've become very accustomed to, you know, basically living in a very differently lit environment than what people used to. But, you know, there's something really, really nice about those old Flemish paintings and the way that they capture the light in those. And, yeah, it's something that as an artist, you know, I want to, you know, I want to explore more.
What's interesting about the lighting, just by happen chance, I watched The Girl with a Pearl, the movie, it was Scarlett Johansson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it showed the Vermeer studio with all the lights. Mm-hmm. And she actually questioned if she should clean the windows, if that would change the lighting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, which he liked, because it's something that, you know, most people didn't think about. Uh-oh, somebody trying to call me. Okay. But yeah, that was kind of a good movie. And actually, they went through a lot of painstaking processes to set up the actual set that they shot that film on to actually be the same scale and a very, very similar lighting effect to Vermeer's actual studio.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, they did a lot of research and stuff on that film. And so what you got, that view was pretty true to the actual studio itself, and you can see that actually reflected in the paintings that he did, because everything he did was right there in that studio.
Right.
All of his work was produced right there. He was not an outdoor painter. So he was not a plein air guy. Sorry.
Right.
But he did, work from life, pretty much exclusively. And he did also use a what they call a camera obscura, which was, they actually had in the film, which was basically what we now call a lucograph. And so a lot of his images, the actual drawing part of it was projected, for the accuracy of it.
Yeah, they showed that. Plus, he also used like mannequins. That even the fingers and everything moved. That he could pose the mannequin after he uses live subjects.
Right.
I had seen the movie, I forgot about it, but it is a good movie.
John, what's the name of the movie?
The girl was
Girl with the pearl.
The Girl with the Pearl.
Yeah.
Girl with the purple earring. Yeah.
Girl with the
That's it.
Girl with the
Scarlett Johansson and Colin Firth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great film. Well worth watching.
Yeah, if you have Prime, it's showing on Prime now.
Okay.
For free.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyway, that's kind of that's one of the things I'm working on right now. The other thing I wanted to mention to you also is I had submitted some paintings that were kind of experimental to the Atlanta Artist Center, and actually the painting I'm talking about, I actually did for this class. Anybody remember that?
Oh yes, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love how you mounted it too.
Well, yeah, this is the actual piece, and I actually got a little honorable mention for that in the current show at the Atlanta Artist.
Very good. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's nice to be mentioned every once in a while.
Yes.
You know? But yeah, this is the final piece, and a lot of people were asking me about this background. They thought basically that I had done a watercolor or a painting on top of gold paper, but the fact is it's a heavyweight mixed media paper, and the gold. Let me blow that up a little bit.
The paint that you purchased, wasn't it?
I remember when you ordered that.
Yeah, that's the paint that you purchased. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's that watercolor out of Japan that I got, and it's a gold metallic, and it really, it takes about 3 or 4 coats of it to build it up, but you can really build it up where it looks, like a very nice, smooth, even, kind of flat, very metallic surface on it. And I was really impressed, with that particular paint, So, this is the part that I did basically as the demo, and then all of this was added in later. And I basically painted out the background in the gold, and then all the rest of this is just pen and ink, over the gold.
Oh, that's fantastic, Charles.
So yeah, it was a fun piece. It was a little different than what I normally do, and but yeah, I was happy that it got a little bit of attention. So
Yes.
it's always nice to be noticed.
What I don't know is how to choose a background, like how you chose that background.
Oh, how did I behind the?
I don't mean how you chose that background. I mean, how do you choose a background in general?
Pretty good question. Well, I think you try to find something that will complement the subject. You know, sometimes actually, particularly like, well, let's go back to talking about the flowers, right? The original shot that I had was a black background, and you can't get more neutral than that. And then after that, you know, I used that art paper in the background, and that added a little bit of a different feel to it. So at some point, you know, I'm going to need to make a choice of, you know, do I want to include that as an element and actually have some sort of color or something going on in the background, or do I just want to keep it as neutral as possible to really focus in, you know, on the objects that I'm painting. And so that's one of the things I need to figure out in the process. And again, you know, that's something that comes in sort of in that research and, you know, the actual study phase of it, where you're developing, you know, you're taking your concept and you're developing it into an image. And that's something that you probably need to decide at that point. You know, it's not something that you want to wait till the end necessarily to do. And you've got a lot of choices. And in fact, I'm going to show you two different artists today, and they take very, very different approaches to that particular question. You know, the first artist that I'm going to show you is an airbrush artist, and generally his solution is he uses the white, you know, the white of the board or the, you know, the surface that he's working on, again, to isolate the image that he's, you know, his subject. And so it makes it, you know, a very simple kind of straightforward process, other than the fact that anybody who's ever tried to do something like that, you soon find out that keeping that background clean and pristine, so that white, you know, really holds together really nicely and doesn't get dirty and kind of smudged and messed up, is not really easy. So there's a little, there's more to it than meets the eye. So
Okay.
yeah, Bob knows all about that now.
Yeah, that experience.
Yeah. So anyway, let's take a look at this guy. Now, this guy is on Facebook, and he goes by the name David. I don't know that his name is actually David, and I kind of doubt it, actually. Just in looking at his work, could be wrong. But, you know, he's a fairly young guy, probably late teens, early 20s. But, you know, a pretty amazing artist, you know. And he's doing some really, really nice stuff. Again, this is acrylic being airbrushed for the most part. Now, he's got some brush work and stuff in here, but his stuff looks, you know, very illustrative, kind of commercial. But he does a wide kind of variety of subjects. You know, he does portraits, animal portraits, you know, and I'll just kind of run you through some of his work. But, you know, his, you know, each of his pieces, you know, again, it's a fairly straightforward, fairly simple, kind of almost commercial approach, where, you know, he's really just kind of focused on one thing. And you'll see that, now this is an exception. He's got this car in the background. But, you know, he's painted this young woman, and, you know, you see the different elements, you know, of what she's wearing, you know, her expression, you know, the headband, things like that. Those are all really, really nice additions, you know, to the actual piece. And what this 1950s, I can't quite tell, I'm guessing it's a Chevrolet. I could be wrong about that, since I'm not an expert about, you know, older cars like that. But you know, what this 50s automobile has to do with the background, I'm not quite sure, you know, with her, but maybe, you know, maybe she likes old cars.
Oh, just
But-
a call. Mhm.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's a color element. Now, for the most part, his work is more like this. And, you know, this guy has an obsession with cats, by the way. And so this is pretty typical, you know, of his work. And again, you know, it's airbrushed acrylic. You know, but again, and Bernice, you were asking about backgrounds. So, you know, this guy's solution is, yeah, I'm not going to worry about the background. I'm basically going to eliminate it. And then, you know, just work in an isolated area. In this particular case, this is a portrait, and, you know, he put a little bit of color back there. Again, a cooler temperature, you know, in the background to play against, you know, this, you know, yellow shawl, you know, wrapped around, you know, this woman's head. And so it gave him some, even though it's not a great value contrast, there's a temperature difference between the two. In this particular case, the next, you know, again, you know, a very similar subject, you know, but he used this yellow kind of wash in the background. And some of this may have been airbrushed, but, you know, some of it was definitely put down wet in the background as well. And I would probably, you know, I would strongly suspect that, you know, he probably rendered the face and the scarf and had all of that in place. And then masked that, you know, the area that he had finished off, and then put in the background last, except for the exception of the hair, which he went back over the edge, you know, and then cut into that, you know, that background to kind of pull the two pieces together. You know, again,
When you do those fine hairlines,
Uh-huh.
one of the problems you run into is something called spidering.
Mhm.
And the darn brushes will sneak up on you, and your paint gets a little bit too thin, and all of a sudden you get these little like
yeah. Well, a lot of times what causes that is you can only go so far with an airbrush, and then you have to stop, take off the tip, clean the needle, and then put it all back together and keep airbrushing. And you've got to
Right.
do that fairly often. Now, one solution for that, you're airbrushing acrylics, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Are you mixing down your airbrush paint?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're mixing it down with water, is that correct?
No, I'm mixing it down with thinner, with airbrush thinner. I'm not
Airbrush.
using.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that will help. But, you know, actually, one of the things that I found in using an airbrush was different paint manufacturers will make pre-mixed airbrush paints that are already liquid and come in like little squeeze jars.
Most of mine are like that. However, one of the things that was recommended to me was to, when you get your paint in the cup on your airbrush,
Right.
you take a little stick of some kind, dip it in that paint, and then put it on the side of your cup. And depending on how it runs down, it should run down fairly rapidly.
Yeah.
And a lot of those pre-mixed paints don't do that. They're kind of stiff. So that's when you start to try to add your media or your thinner.
Okay. Yeah, because they've got to be really fluid.
Yes.
Because if they're not really fluid, your brush, well, the paint begins to stick on that needle really quickly, and that's when you start getting it spitting and doing all kind of funny stuff that you don't really want it to do.
Yep.
Now
Yeah.
now looking at this girl,
Uh-huh.
you see the background at the top half is bluish and the bottom half is yellowish. So is he using complementary colors for that background or contrasting colors, to make the colors of what she has on in her skin
Right.
tone?
Well, yeah,
Look-
basically what you have here is an orange versus blue painting, right? You've got the blue, a cool temperature, right, in the background.
Mm.
And then all the skin tones are more kind of yellow and orange, warmer temperature,
Okay.
the contrast.
So the cool against the warm more or less.
Right, yeah, it's a direct compliment. On the
Now, what about the yellow that's in the bottom? Because that's yellow. Yellow's not a cool color, is it?
Are you saying in the background down here?
Yeah, the background.
Well, it might look a little bit warm. It's certainly warmer than the blue, but it's actually probably just the white of the paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's just letting it fade out to the white, of.
Oh, okay.
And I'm guessing that he's working either on like a Bristol board, or he's working on like a mixed media, a board or paper, or illustration board. He's not doing these on canvas.
Oh.
And you can kind of tell that, where he used the medium. And interestingly enough, one of the effects that he gets is he gets this very watery sort of effect. And Bob, I don't know whether you've experimented with this or not, but if you, whatever surface you're working on, if you lay it down flat and you'll take like a mop brush and you'll flood the surface with water, not paint, just water. And then you take your airbrush, and then if you can get it to spatter, basically just spatter color into it and let it diffuse into that, you can get this sort of granular effect, fairly easily with that.
I have not done that yet, but that's one of the things that's on my list to do.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, he probably did this top, and this in a very similar way. Now, the other way you can do it, if this is all masked off, so you don't have to worry about, the color bleeding in through her skin tones and things. Once you get this wet, you can actually use it like watercolor and just from a brush, let it drip or drop into those pools and let it diffuse. And again, you'll get a similar effect to what he's got back here. The problem with stuff like that is, it's really difficult to control. It's not going to do exactly what you want it to do. So sometimes, sometimes it works out really, really well, and you really like the background. But it's real easy, I think, to go too far and to really like overdo it. So you've got to be somewhat restrained with it, and not overdo it. Moving on though. See, he's got a bit of a blue background back here. He's just kind of laid in. And again, it's cool against warm. Now, in this particular case, he's taken a little bit of blue, and overall, he's got this black dog. So there's a good value contrast in here, but temperature-wise, it's all pretty much so, cooler colors except for the eyes and some warm notes, in around the muzzle and the mouth. So pretty nice airbrush, little piece of painting of a child. Now, for those of you who were here on Friday, remember I threw one little girl in there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She
And
wasn't,
my little girl looks old too.
yeah, she wasn't that easy to draw, was she?
No, she kept getting older.
Right. Yeah, it's very easy, you know, when trying to draw children to, you know, to age them, you know, considerably. So,
Charles, speaking of Friday,
Yeah.
you also said you were going to send everybody a text this weekend
right.
with your.
Yeah,
I didn't get.
yeah, I have,
I
I've
didn't-
not gotten around to doing all that yet.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
working on it. Yeah. You know, I'm
Okay.
working.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I need to get a text out to everybody so that you guys have my contact on my official Fulton County cell phone now.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be the idea.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, you kind of get the idea, you know, of what this guy does. And I mean, you know, again, I don't know that much about him, okay, other than, you know, he's fairly young. But you know, he does some nice work, you know, and he's, you know, he certainly worked with this process long enough, you know, that he's got his technique down. And
What's his name again?
he just goes by the name of David. But
David?
David, that's it, David. No last name, just David.
And that's a common name, good grief.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, he's got some nice stuff.
Like that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, he's got this thing with cats, you know.
And big cats. I like those big cats.
Yeah. Well, he's got big cats and little cats.
Yeah, I like those. That one.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to one in particular that I really like. Yeah, this one coming up. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's got the little house cat and then he's got the tiger.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes if you've ever lived with a cat before, you know, sometimes they think they're a tiger, you know, but they're, but let's see, what else can I show you? Oh, yeah. I would venture to guess if I, you know, and again, this is just speculation. I don't really know this, but I would say he's probably Hindu, probably, you know, from India originally. Now he may be living in the United States. I would venture to guess that's the case, just because of, you know, some of the subjects, you know, the people that he's doing, you know, are really kind of all over the place. And India itself is,
Charles, before you get too far, can I see that picture of the elephant again?
the elephant. Sure,
Yeah, right. I think.
that guy right
Yeah,
there.
that one.
Yeah. Yes,
I just
and he is an Indian elephant, by the way.
okay. I just want the screenshot it. That's all. They got
Okay.
it. Mm.
Yeah, this one was particularly nice, I thought. Composition was pretty effective. You know, again, you know, that's a pretty nice piece. The background element, the stained glass, is kind of a Art Deco, Art Nouveau style. So like I said, you know, he's got a lot of different influences, you know, that show up in his work. But overall, you know, really, really, you know, pretty nice stuff.
Airy. They are very bright. Yeah.
Pardon?
I said they're all very bright and airy.
Yeah. Well,
I
and
love that brightness.
yeah, that's one of
I
the
mean,
beautiful things
You
about.
can't walk by it and miss it.
I'm sorry, what?
So you can't walk by it and miss it.
Oh, okay. That's one of the nice things about airbrush is that because the paint is so, basically thin, you're not using like real thick, heavy, opaque passages of paint. It's more luminescent.
Oh yeah, I love it.
And that's probably one of the things that, Bob likes about airbrush is that, you can accomplish something, fairly quickly. There's a lot of preparation involved in it, but you can really kind of control things in a very different way.
I need to ask Bob initially when he got started, how much money did he have to start with?
Sorry, say that again, please.
What did it cost you to get all the equipment to get started with the airbrushing?
Okay, well, a decent compressor is, well, you can get kits. You can spend probably $150 to $200 and get paint. Okay. A compressor. I did a good bit of research, and one of the issues when you buy a compressor, you certainly want a compressor that has an air tank with it. You don't want one that's going to continually run. It'll drive you nuts. So you need this one with a storage tank, which is they're a little bit more expensive. Okay. And then a variety of I've gotten a variety of paints. The ones that I found the most expensive are the golden thin, what they call acrylic thin, high thin, or something like that. But there's a number of them paints available that are decent to get started with. You want to make sure you get thinner and cleaner for your brushes, because anyway, while you're doing it, you will wind up cleaning frequently, and while you're learning to paint with it, because you change colors. If you only have one airbrush, you don't want to start with black and then all of a sudden want to go with white, because you wind up with gray.
Okay.
So anyway, there's.
Do you need multiple airbrushes then?
Well, you can. I do. I have multiple. I have 2 that I use mainly, and then I got a kit that's got actually 6 airbrushes in it that are all siphon feed rather than gravity feed. And if you look it up and learn about it,
you like the siphon better than the gravity, right?
No, I like the gravity work better than siphon. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I like the way that looks.
Oh, I love it too. But basically, you use stencil. You use a lot of stencils and masking, and getting the material that you can mask with that's not going to leave a residue on your paper. That's a whole horse of a different color.
And so did you find somebody online that you could, tell you what the first step you should do if you're going to air?
Oh, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube about that. Just look at airbrush beginning, and you'll see a whole bunch of people that are more than willing to share their information about how to airbrush and the stuff you need to get started with. And oh yeah, there's lots of information out there on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, and airbrushes are interesting tools. Like I said, I used an airbrush for many years before everything became digital. And unlike you, Bob, I kind of like the siphon feed because I used a lot of Iwata airbrushes.
Okay.
But they had I bought the bottles that you could pre-mix your color, and I had about I had about 6 or 7 different bottles, and I would mix my colors, have them all ready, and then I had one container that just had fluid to flush out my airbrush in between when I changed colors, so I could keep working and I wouldn't have to break down the whole airbrush. But airbrushing can be fun. There's a couple things you need to know about airbrushing. One is you got to be careful with it, because what you're doing is you're basically spraying paint, that's atomized, into the air, which means, it's probably a good idea to have a mask while you're working. And you want
We
to,
all used to now is having.
pardon?
We all have now.
Okay, yes, we should all have math now. But you also want to use a fairly well ventilated space.
Okay.
You know, because acrylic paint, though it's not supposedly toxic, it's still probably not good, you know, to be breathing in and getting, you know, in your lungs. And so working in a small room that's enclosed, a lot of that mist will stay in the air. And so, you know, having good ventilation is a requirement, you know, for your own safety. Yeah. The other thing is, you'll notice if you use airbrush a lot, and I don't know whether you've noticed this, Bob, you know, where you're working and stuff. Have you noticed that there's a fine, kind of like a fine dust on all your furniture in the room now?
Well, I'm in a pretty good sized room, and I have carved out a little kind of a studio space in this fairly large room that doesn't have a lot of furniture with it. I mean, it's just I've got some, you know, some work table and a drawing table, and so far I have not seen a whole lot of overspray that's getting all over the place.
Good. Yeah, that's a good sign. You know, I've been into different studios, and you know, where they're using airbrushes and air guns and stuff like that, and you know, the overspray is actually kind of a problem after a while because it will build up on your furniture and stuff, which means, you know, it's just the stuff filtering down out of the air that didn't end up on the board. So,
one of the things that I've started doing though is I have a fairly large piece of illustration board that I put behind whatever the work I'm working on. So basically, when I'm spraying, the overspray is gonna go to this larger whiteboard. Most of it's gonna stick on that before it gets too far away in the atmosphere.
Okay,
so,
good. Yeah, you want to do whatever you can, you know, to avoid, you know, having a lot of that stuff floating around, you know, through your house and, you know, in the air, because you're going to breathe it, and or, you know, you're going to come in contact with it, you know, in the house. And so, yeah, you know.
Does it work well outside, say on like a deck or something like that?
No, it doesn't, because you've got too much opportunity for the breeze to come up.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And all of a sudden the paint's everywhere that you don't even know. It's got to be pretty still atmospheric wise in the area that you're painting. That's what I've discovered anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You also don't want to work with a fan in the room.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
one last question. Do both of you have a particular brand of air tank that you like?
Well, the one I bought was what's called Master something or other, and that's one I have. But Itawa does it. They have their own stuff. It's a little more expensive, but there's several brands out there. Pache makes another one, but I haven't heard a whole lot of people who are overly enthralled with the general Pache products. That some of the airbrushes they like, but that's about the only thing.
Okay. And what brand? Which one? When you use it, Charles, which brand did you use?
Well, I went through about 5 different compressors over about 20 years. You know, and probably the best compressor that I really liked was the Iwata.
What?
Iwata. IWATA.
IWATA. Okay.
Yeah. And they make airbrushes, but they also make the compressors. And they have they have probably about 10 or 15 different compressors in different sizes. And some of them have tanks and some of them don't. But the nice thing about the Iwata compressors are that it's a refrigerator motor. So it's silent. You don't hear it. And you can actually have it in the room with you, you know, under your drawing board or wherever you're working. You can have it close by. And, you know, it doesn't make a lot of noise and stuff. The small compressors, and I think Bob mentioned this, the ones without a tank, if you're not using it for like long periods of time and you're just using it for like little touch-ups and paintings and stuff like that, you know, that little compressor is fine. But if you're doing a lot of work and it's your main tool, then you probably want to buy the larger compressor with a tank, just because, as he said, you know, with the tank, it will fill the tank and then the motor will shut off so it has a chance to cool down. And it's not overworking, you know, the compressor all the time. And the compressor will last a good long time, you know. There's some minimal maintenance that you have to do on them, you know, just cleaning them out every once in a while, you know, depressurizing the tank, and, you know, draining any fluid and stuff out of it and not letting it sit in there. It's kind of important. But, you know, for the most part, you know, a lot of them these days are pretty much so you don't have to add oil to them or anything. You know, they run. You know, if you get one of the kind of mid to upper grade compressors, you can run them 24/7 and, you know, not have any real problems with them. You know, if you try to do that with the smaller compressor, you're eventually going to wear it out just because it's constantly running and it does get hot. So, you know, like I said, it just won't take the same wear and tear on it. But there are, if you want to try it and just see if,
Before I go on, we want to try it. Let me tell you, my biggest problem in painting is, as you probably know, is blending. So I'm wondering, was it easier or harder? If it's easier with airbrush and I want to try it, if it's rougher, then I do not want to try it.
Yeah. Well, the fact is it easier? It's more work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually more work than working with a brush and trying to blend two wet areas together. But you cannot get the same effect with trying to blend with a brush that you can get with an airbrush.
Okay.
It's different. I would describe it as different.
Yeah, it's a different look to it. And I've known a lot of fine artists to actually airbrush oil paint. Now, I don't highly recommend it, but they do, and they come out with some amazing results. I mean, you would think that the stuff is, you know, that you're looking at a photograph. You know, I mean, seriously, it's beautifully done. But you know, but again, it's like anything else. You know, don't operate under the illusion that your art materials are safe or that they're your friend, because they're not. They can be toxic, and you can be, you know, putting yourself, you know, at risk health-wise if you misuse them or you're not careful. So, you know, make some good educated choices on you know, how you set things up and how you use materials. Now, Bernice, you know, as far as blending goes, like I said, you know, you can get beautiful results with an airbrush, but there's a lot of work. And we're talking about, you know, masking things off. Bob talked about that a lot. You know, cutting what we call frisket, so that you can work in a small area and not contaminate everything else around it. So it just kind of depends on how you like to work. If you're very patient and methodical, and you can, you know, you like controlling everything, you know, in the studio environment, things like that, airbrush might be a great tool for you. You know, if you're more spontaneous and you just want to get something down quickly, airbrush is probably not for you. Okay. So,
Okay.
yeah, you just, yeah, it all has to do with your particular temperament. Okay.
But you also forgot to tell her how much it is to purchase. You have to allow allotment of about $500. And then if you don't like it, you have wasted that money.
Well,
So,
that's kind of where I was going. Actually, there are airbrush sets that you can buy. There's a system out there, it's called Aztec. And, I don't recommend their airbrushes and stuff like that. But, for a beginner set, I think you can probably get the whole setup for about $30 or $40. Okay. And, it has a small compressor that comes with it. You could get an Aztec set and just try it out and see if you kind of like it or have fun with it. Again, if it's not going to be your main tooling, you just want to use it occasionally to soften a background or something like that. It might, be perfect for you. Like anything else, you don't have to go out and spend, a ton of money, on
But you
any
know,
of this.
but
Pardon?
you, but you, but you know, Gene, I appreciate what you said, but I haven't been to a movie for a year and a half, haven't eaten out, just started eating out recently. So it doesn't take much for me to feel rich. So actually, I feel that I have lots of extra money these days because I haven't been in the place for a year.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I promise you, I won't feel wasted. I'll feel like, oh, well, I have extra money right now,
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I saw something, they were having a discussion about the fact, I don't know whether most of you know this or not, but for really the first time in almost 35, 40 years, Americans actually have money in their savings accounts. It's a new thing. For about 30, 35 years, most Americans had nothing in savings, but, because of the pandemic, a lot of people have actually started putting money in their savings accounts. Who knew, right? So, not that that's art related, but anyhow.
you weren't using gas, you weren't using,
yeah.
lots of, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, a lot of people are not eating out and stuff. So anyway, I've got one more artist to share with you. Okay. And his name is Mark Legg. And here, we'll start with his website. And take a look at that. So, this is Mark. This is a picture of Mark. Everybody see that pretty clearly? Hello?
yes, it's just small.
Yeah.
We see him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's his web page. And yeah, so he's got a small picture of himself up there. And I guess he's trying to take over the painter of light. I don't know about that. Anyway, he comes from a commercial art background. He was an animator and art director for a good number of years. And so now he's doing fine art, paintings, more or less. And he has a fairly impressive list of galleries representing him. He's got what, 8 galleries, different parts of the country, mainly in, like Canada and the United States. But, I've heard of all those galleries. They're all higher end galleries, and they all represent him. So he's done a good job at marketing and getting a series of outlets, for his work. Now the question is, if you've got 8 galleries, pushing your work, that means that you have to be producing, a fair amount of work on a regular basis, to keep all of them, basically supplied with new work. Because one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want your paintings sitting in the same gallery for a long period of time. You know, if that painting is in that gallery for more than, say, 6 to 8 months, it's probably worn out its welcome, and it's time to rotate it out and move it to a different gallery or a different venue, and let other people see it. That's just one of the things about the art business. But anyway, this is Mark.
So that's why when I go to the art museum, I can't take people back because the artist is gone.
Are you talking about a museum or a gallery?
Oh, a museum. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now, yeah, they'll change out their collections on a regular basis.
Mhm.
But also, you know, most museums, well, museums have two things going on. Most museums have what they call a permanent collection,
Right.
and they may specialize in a particular type of art that they collect in their permanent collection. And then they have ongoing shows, right? So they'll bring in shows from other places, say other museums or, you know, private collectors. And then they'll present those, you know, to their viewing public, right? Galleries are a little bit different, you know, because in a museum, they're not trying to sell artwork. It's more educational. You know, you're there to view it. You're not buying the paintings off the wall. In a gallery, they're actually trying to sell you artwork, you know, as something collectible and something that you can take home and put on your wall. Okay. So, like any retailer, you know, they want a steady, kind of consistent and continuous supply of artwork that they can, you know, show their collectors. And so everybody, you can see this painting, right?
Well,
This point.
buildings with cars.
Yes, yeah. Now this is pretty typical of his work. To me, and I'm just going to be real upfront about this, okay? I find his work kind of busy, okay? And, you know, very active and energetic. For his subject matter that he paints, which is generally architectural, you know, that works. And, you know, he does a lot of city type scenes. And, you know, and like I said, you know, I think that works. It kind of captures that sort of frenetic energy, you know, of being in a big city. And so, you know, I think his style is appropriate to what he's doing. Now, he has an interesting process. You know, say like this particular painting, right? Again, very energetic, a lot of things to look at in this painting. But, you know, I'm going to walk you kind of through the process. And these didn't really come out specifically in order. But like, for example, that would be where he started with that painting. Okay. So, you know, he laid in kind of a layer of paint, and then it looks like he lifted out in some areas and then, you know, added in others to begin to get sort of a loose composition. And then he built the painting up from there. Well, that's probably a little further along. Let's see. I don't know. That's kind of the next step that he, oh, wait a minute. No. That's the next step that he shows. Okay. So we went from here to here. So you see how the figures are beginning to develop? Let's see. Then he probably went here. Like I said, these didn't come out in order. So little by little, you know, they're beginning to emerge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, pretty much, you know, close to the final, right? And that's pretty much so his process, with all of his work. So he builds it up in layers. He's pretty loose, but pretty accurate. He doesn't seem to do like a lot of preparatory, like underpainting or drawing. So his work is, very, very direct, and in a sense, it has kind of a spontaneous feel to it. Almost as if he were doing a lot of like painting from life with plein air. The fact is, he does some of that as like preparatory work for concept development, things like that. But for the most part, all of these are studio paintings, and they tend to be, from what I saw, kind of medium to large size. When I say large, maybe 48 to 60 inches. Smaller, it's around, probably 24 to 30 inches. So. But he has a good sense of depth and space. He handles architecture, really well. I think a lot of the paint is probably applied both with broad brushes, but also palette knife. And he really, builds up, nice, very direct layers of paint. And the way that he uses his brush work is very intentional, as far as laying down directional, paint strokes to sort of describe shapes and forms. And in particular, I kind of like his still lifes. I actually, a lot of the city scenes, things like that, I'm not a big fan of, but when it gets into, painting like little still lifes like this, I think he does a beautiful job of using color and the actual paint surface. And I guess what I really admire about these are that, they're right on that edge between, being almost totally abstract and at the same time representation. It just, kind of really nice balance, between the two. Something like that, okay. I mean, it's impressive, just, I'm thinking, trying to paint a subject like that. For me personally, doesn't really float my boat. I don't get excited about that. It's nicely done. And, he certainly has a good sense of perspective and, being able to, push and pull space in the painting. But, compared to something like that, I really prefer the still life, just the color, the energy of it. Anybody got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, he's kind of an extension of Smith in a way, because look at the background on his still lifes is it's background, but it's nothing. Whereas your eyes are drawn to specific images on his still lifes, whereas the architectural ones, your eyes wandering all over the painting, pretty much. I mean, you get some focus, but you're looking every place on those. So,
Yeah.
That one's great. I mean, your image is what's important. That's modern.
Yeah.
today.
Yep. Yeah, he did a whole series on COVID. I think that's, yeah, out of everything he's done, that's really one of the better paintings. I mean, it's that concept part that works here. You know, obviously, you know, both these people kind of working, you know, in a hospital situation or whatever. And, you know, they're obviously, you know, have some kind of relationship going on between them, and yet, you know, they're kind of separated by, you know, all of this, you know, PPE that we all had to live with for a year. San Francisco Bay Area. And again, you know, I mean, does a beautiful job, you know, with architectural pieces and things like that. You know, not my thing, but okay.
With the bridge.
Yep. But yeah, and he gets down to doing, you know, stuff like this. You know, and you know, I find these more interesting to me. You know, this, okay, it's Venice, all right. But, and you know, you can appreciate, you know, the fact that all the time that it took, you know, to figure out the spatial relationships and the architecture and things like that, but yeah, not something I would want to do. Now that's something that I would like to do. You know, it's a bowl full of lemons, but okay, you know. You know, just the way he applied the paint and the looseness of it. You know, I kind of admire that. This is another architectural piece. And again, this kind of goes back to, you know, his initial process, you know, with these paintings. And again, you know, somehow the numbering on these got out of order. Yeah, to probably, well, no, from there to here, yeah, and then here, and then there, and then the final. Okay. I'm going to kind of skip ahead here. Yeah, like that one. I'd be, you know, if I could knock something like that out, I would be very happy. You know, with that as a painting, just a nice result, you know, from the work. I got some. I also downloaded some figurative stuff that he did. I want to get to that. He has a ton of work. You know, I thought that was a pretty nice piece. Just the crab trawlers. And again, you know, the thing I like about his work is it's right on that edge between being, you know, totally abstract and representational at the same time. You know, and he manages that balance, I think, pretty well overall. More boats. But yeah, really nice little painting. You know, just really beautifully done. And, you know, give you, you know, the suggestion of, you know, a form and a figure sitting there. But he doesn't overwork it. He doesn't over detail it. You know, he leaves it really kind of open to interpretation. You know, you begin to see, you know, whatever you want to see in there. So anyway, that's Mark Legg, spelled L-E-G-U-E. Okay. Any thoughts about his work? Like, dislike?
I really like the still lifes and the figures. I think there he shows his mastery of light, the buildings and cityscapes. Not so much.
That was one thing of a bridge that I really like. I don't remember which one it was. What did you say the artist's name? His name is L-E-Q-U-E?
No, L-E-G-U-E.
Oh, okay, I can't read my own writing.
Legg. Yeah.
Yeah.
L.A.
L-A. I can't spell either.
Okay. L-A.
But I think he should have stopped before he got to the finished of the buildings. The second or third layer looked better than the finished product because of the looseness of it.
Uh-huh.
Some of it I really love.
You know, Gene, I kind of agree with you actually on that one. I do. You know, because yeah, I think some of his architectural pieces, again, you know, they got too busy. You know, too busy, too futzy. You know.
That's why I think I like the still lifes and figures better.
Yeah.
They were more loose.
Well, you know, the thing with the figures in the still lifes,
It feels
it's
more alive.
It's more simplified in some ways, and yet his use of color, you know, was, I think, better. You know, I mean, or at least appealed to me. A lot of the architectural pieces seem to be very kind of neutral, you know, in color, and they're and again, really busy, which I don't.
It's not loose. It's that's what's the matter with my streetcars. I think they're too like a photograph instead of like a heart, a movement, a beauty to the movement and the paint color. That's what I liked about the rest of it that he had.
Yeah, and I think, well, one thing about, I think, the still lives and the figurative pieces, they're much smaller, and so when you're viewing them, you kind of see the process, you know, in those paintings, and that tends to get kind of covered up and buried, you know, in the architectural pieces, because I think he's working at a larger scale as well. But yeah, I definitely like his still lives. The still lives are really my favorite. You know, the figures I think are good. They're solid, and I like them better than the architectural pieces. But I've seen figurative painters who have that kind of direct feel to the paint, you know, that I think are better, you know, at doing figures. So at any rate, wanted to introduce you to him, you know, just somebody else to look at, a different approach. So, you know, maybe some of you will get the big brushes out and start, you know, playing around with stuff like that. Anybody inspired by any of that stuff? Since that's our goal.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right. That's kind of it. You know, that's what I've got today. Hey, Richard, how you doing? Oh, you're muted. Can't hear you. Okay. Eloise, what'd you think?
Now you can hear me.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I was muted and I've been walking, so I couldn't say a lot.
Oh.
But I kind of liked Mark Legg's paintings. They were, I guess, busy. It looks like they took a whole lot of work, the cityscapes. But I was wondering how he did that. How do you do that style of painting? Is it just dabbing squares or what? Because I don't know. I was interested in how he did it.
Yeah. Well, we kind of walked through, he showed a couple of his process where he'd lay down kind of a monochrome background, and then he would lift out either with a rag or a squeegee or a brush, lighter areas, and then, you know, add midtones in very abstractly until he started getting some shapes or forms. And then he would go back and layer over that with the beginning first kind of passes of color, you know, maybe something darker to establish the composition, and then work in layers of lighter color over that. But they started off, you know, really abstract, and you know, didn't do a lot of drawing, you know, not any real detail, you know. But again, you know, they developed into something that was, you know, real solid, you know, very representational, but very loose and painterly at the same time. So
it looked very impressionistic to me.
Yeah, and I mean, he's probably using fairly good sized flat brushes, because all the paint strokes, if you look at it, were kind of this rectangular or squared edge to it. Yeah. And I've seen painters working in styles like that before, and so they're primarily just working with flats, that and palette knives, you know, to do stuff like that. And he's getting a fair amount of paint down, you know, on the surface. You know, he's not holding back on the paint or anything. So, you know, he's very direct. Put it down and leave it alone. Move on. So. Yeah, he's kind of interesting guy. June, got any thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about what we looked at today?
It's good. I cannot do it.
You cannot do it, huh?
It's hard to do it.
You mean the architectural
flower?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You know, I think the still lives, you know, or the figures, you'd probably be pretty good at. You know, the buildings and stuff, maybe not so much.
Yeah, it's challenging for me. I always forgot the point, 1 point, 2 point. I always forgot that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's always a challenge for everybody. But you know, it's like anything else. You know, if you work with it, you know, on a regular basis, you get better at it. You know. So anyway.
Yeah, because recently I didn't draw anything because I got eye surgery. Still
Right.
recover. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you want to make sure to recover from your eye surgery. Okay. We want those to work well. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So anybody else got anything we need to talk about before we go away today?
Let me say something.
Sure.
It looks a lot like tourist art that you see in places like Thailand and in the Orient. A similar style, it looks like to me.
Yeah.
It puts a lot of paint on there, and there's a lot of things going on.
Yep. Yeah, if you looked at the list of galleries that he had, you know, basically selling in Canada and the U.S. Like I said, you know, they're all well-respected galleries. You know, good size, you know, galleries, and you know, he's got to be putting out a ton of work, you know, to keep them all, you know, with a supply of art there. So. But, hey, you know, he's making a living, you know, pushing paint. That ain't a bad thing. So, anyway, on that happy note, I guess I'm done. Anybody else?
See you tomorrow.
All right. We will see you tomorrow at about 2 o'clock. Send in some work. Send in your drawings. I've got some of you guys' drawings. Others I don't. And I guess we'll see it too. Okay.
We send them to the old address then, the old.
Yeah. Well, the email hasn't changed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Send them to the email address. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Bye.